Okay, we are live. Hello, Stephen Kyoto.
Hey, hello there. How are you?
This is an exciting one for me for a number of reasons. I want to go all the way back to the late 80s, early 90s. I was in middle school, and there was a place down the street from my house called the 99-cent Video Clearance Center. And it was right across the street from Blockbuster, and everyone was going to Blockbuster, but every once in a while we would go over there because they had $1 movies that were not new releases and you could keep them for a week. And so they had probably the nerdiest film guys I've ever met working there, and me and my buddies would go in there and we would be like, what movies do we gotta see? And they would turn us on to like all the Trauma Team movies like Toxic Avenger and Class of Nukem High. They talked to me about they're the ones that introduced me to Rocky Horror Picture Show, a lot of different things. And then one day, and also Evil Dead, the Evil Dead series and Army of Darkness. And then yeah, big one there. I'm a big fan of that. And then of course, one of them that they introduced me to was Killer Clowns from Outer Space, and absolutely loved it. And it just became a big part of my childhood. One of the ones where like I would, they'd say, "What is this Killer Clowns movie?" I'm like, "You've got to see it. They've got it at the 99-cent Video Clearance Center. Go over there and get it," because they didn't have it many places. And now here we are, and I get to talk to the man behind Killer Clowns, and so super excited about that. So glad to have you on.
Oh, thank you for asking me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So the first question I have is, you're very specific. You work in puppetry animation, stop motion animation. You teach stop motion animation. What exactly drew you to that?
Oh, actually, I can tell you exactly what it was. And I used to live in the Bronx, New York, is where I grew up. And at a very young age, I saw Willis O'Brien's 1933 King Kong.
Oh, wow.
And that was just an amazing image for me because down the block from my apartment, we had these elevated train tracks. And when I saw it in the movie, when King Kong was rampaging through New York City and he knocked down those trains from the elevated train tracks, it was real for me. It was like he was walking in my neighborhood. And it was like this, it was an amazing image. And I remember asking my mom and dad to take me to the Empire State Building where I could see the crack in the cement that he made when he fell. It was absolutely real. This fantastic fantasy creature in my real neighborhood set me on a path to fantasy filmmaking.
Man. So were you just a fan of monster movies in particular, or all movies? Is there some genre that you were really into?
No, at that time it was really monster movies. My brother Charlie, my older brother Charlie, and I lived in the Bronx, and we'd go to the movies all the time. We would see everything. The Ray Harryhausen films, they had to be monster oriented. It was funny. We would see monster movies, not really horror films, but monster films with giant creatures. In fact, the early Toho productions like Godzilla and Rodan, we loved those films too. But it's just a giant monster attacking the city really hit home for us. But it was interesting. It was something different. Even at a young age, we knew there was something different between, let's say, the Japanese monster movies and the effects work of Willis O'Brien and Ray Harryhausen. In the performance of the monsters, it was just something more engaging about them. There were stronger characters. And as we grew older, we realized that the Japanese movies were men in suits and the other films were stop motion animation, something we knew nothing about.
Wow. So how does one get into this work?
Well, I guess I would have to thank Forrest J. Ackerman and his famous Monsters of Filmland magazine. That was our entry into the world of filmmaking. Like I said, we were fans of the movies, but we had no idea. It's not like living in LA where you might be living next to a DP or a director or a screenplay writer. No, in New York, we didn't have any of those kind of contacts. So things we saw on television, things we saw in the theater, we didn't know where they came from. But we had this fascination. So when we saw Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine, they'd show some behind the scenes of how these things were done. And we realized, wow, people make these things. And I think it was in 1960. My parents, we moved out to the country. Long Island in the 60s was the country. More trees than houses back then.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and it's a rather an odd way to get involved in filmmaking. We used to buy like 8mm movies of Ray's movies and all these horror films that you can get on like an 8mm, and you needed a projector in order to show them. So we got our parents to buy a projector, but instead they bought like a camera projector type kit.
Hmm.
So Charlie went up in the attic months before Christmas and saw that we had a camera and a projector, and we started designing, making movies. We started doing puppetry and taking our models and our blocks and our army men and dinosaur models and started making movies. And little by little, we learned how to animate frame by frame, stop motion with an 8mm camera. And I was like 10 years old. Charlie
Wow.
was 12, and we were making movies in the basement.
Wow. That's awesome. That's so great. What I love about that story right there is that, you had a dream, you had a passion from a very young age, and you pursued it. And it's obviously been successful.
Yeah, very fortunate. I mean, I tell my children and everybody I know, my students as well, follow that passion. If you can follow that and find a way to earn a living, you're being in a good spot in life. And many people don't. And maybe some people aren't as lucky and they don't find it, or they don't pursue their interests for other reasons. But I've been very fortunate in that respect, that I just had this passion, never as an opportunity for a job, never for a way of making money. It was just a form of play that
Mm.
I did as a child. And it's just what I wanted to do without any regard to any financial impact.
Do you ever wake up? Sorry to interrupt you, but do you ever wake up some days and just go, I'm living the dream. Like, I'm doing what I always wanted to do. I'm getting to play with these animations and do these things. I mean, does that ever hit you like that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Actually, as I get older now, I realize how lucky I am. I'm making this transition from, let's say, production to academia with my
Hmm.
college and teaching. And I'm trying to get out of production, but things are going really well right now. So the
Uh-huh.
transition's been kind of challenging. And I'm thinking, I said, I've had a pretty good creative career. So many people come to Hollywood and they work for other productions and they do, and you work for other creatives and it's really satisfying. But to come to a new city, not a local, and actually carve out a career, and we've made a TV show. My brothers and I, we've made a TV, we've done a motion picture, we've written a book, we've done a holiday special, and it's our own work. It's our own ideas, and that's pretty unique. So we're very fortunate. And we had a great career just doing contract work, working with Tim Burton, working with Matt and Trey on Team America, and John Favreau. I mean, yeah, I'm very lucky.
Yeah,
Very
you've worked with the who's who in Hollywood. I mean, you've been on some of the most famous movies of all time. And one of the things I wanted to bring up, which I found super fascinating, I just learned this actually today, was that you before Killer Clowns, you were working on Fairy Tale Theater with Shelley Duvall.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Was there you were building sets, is that right? Was that what you were doing?
I think it was special props. I mean,
Okay.
there was the art director, Mike Erler. He would build the sets, and then it would be a special prop like the magic mirror in Snow White,
Mhm.
or um, well, a giant sea serpent puppet for the mermaid. What was it, the
Yeah.
Little Mermaid? So we
Right.
were always called in to do those specialty props.
Mhm. Okay. Well, was there one in particular? Because they did a series of them. I think there might have been 6 or 8 of them. Was there one in particular that was the most fun for you?
Oh, they all were unique and special in each way. The very first one we did was the Emperor and the Nightingale,
Oh yeah.
and the Emperor was Mick Jagger.
Yeah.
Shelley would just contact anybody she liked and ask them if they wanted to be on her show. And all of the big celebrities in the 80s and 90s, they wanted to be a part of it. So there I was. We made a mechanical bird, a clockwork bird that was radio controlled, and Mick Jagger was the one. I was sitting there with him while we were doing the scene, operating the puppet. It was a blast. And then we
That's
did Pinocchio with Paul Rubens as Pinocchio and Carl Reiner as Geppetto. And those two guys on the set were just a riot. And Vanessa Redgrave, she was the queen. Oh, she was beautiful. She was Princess Guinevere, Queen Guinevere from Camelot. And we were working with her. And then we worked with Francis Ford Coppola on Rip Van Winkle with Eiko, the Japanese designer. It was a great time. And
yeah.
Tim Burton, we worked with Tim Burton on Aladdin and his Magic Lamp.
That's
Yeah.
It's so crazy how you think about that. Sometimes it's fun when you look back. I'm a big fan of film just in general, just the history of it. And you got to think, I mean, for people who haven't seen fairy tale theater, I mean, you're not joking. It was the who's who of, I mean, they were the most famous stars were on these shows. I mean, Robin Williams was in it on The Princess and the Frog, and we had Mark Hamill was in Jack and the Beanstalk. I mean, you know, these were like the guys who were, I mean, he's coming off of Star Wars, you know, and he's doing fairy tale theater. That was a lot of fun for the kids back then. And so you went from that to pitching Killer Clowns. Is that right?
Yeah, well, that's my philosophy. I keep on telling people work gets work and good work gets good work.
Right.
We were working for Fairy Tale Theater for a couple of years, and Fred Fuchs, who was the one of the producers, he came to us and said, "Hey guys, I know some people that have some money for low budget films. Do you have any ideas that you want to pitch?" And we had this thing called Killer Clowns from Outer Space. So we went in with Fred Fuchs to Transworld Entertainment, pitched it, and our first pitch, we sold it in the room. We had the pitch. Charlie did my brother Charlie did a poster, and I had this. In fact, I have it right here. I did a maquette.
Oh wow!
This is the sales pitch. It was a clown. Oh, it's kind of there. A clown holding a puppet with a ray gun, and that was the joke. It's Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
That's so awesome.
That's
That's the original thing. That right there is the original sales pitch.
That's it. I think we had one that was painted. This is a casting of it, but this is the original sculpt. Yeah.
Wow.
That's what they look like.
That's so explain, because there's a lot of people who don't probably understand the pitching process. How rare is it that you sell in the room? I mean, how that had to have been rare, right?
Oh, well, over the course of the last 35 years of my career, I've yet to sell another feature film, so it is rare. And it was just so dumb. We went in there, we just pitched this idea. And pitching, for those who don't know, it's just presenting a concept. You talk about the storyline, you talk about the characters. And if you have the skill set, like Charlie could paint and I could sculpt, we actually came with some kind of visual aids to kind of show them the concept. And when we sold it, we said, wow, this is easy. But we've never been able to do it again. And mind you, we've been pitching since. Oh, we have been pitching. It's like a second occupation for us. It's a sideline. We come up with our ideas. We go around. We start pitching ideas and stuff. And it, well, sometimes it works. We pitched a TV show to CBS in the 90s called The Amazing Life Sea Monkeys, and we got that on the air.
Nice.
We pitched Alien Christmas based on a book that I wrote with Jim Strain. And Jon Favreau liked it, and we pitched it, and we got a Netflix special. So it's worked over the time, but it's not as easy as it was that first time we did it.
Right. Well, let's talk about that, because that's the thing. There had to have been stars aligning there, because I do know you were doing that movie in a time that's so different than now, because you could make a movie and not do necessarily great in the theater, but then you have VHS, which could create kind of like a cult follow. Like there was a video rental market where you could, you know, that's where a lot of the cult classics came from, right?
Yeah, but it's interesting. It doesn't seem so unique. I'll tell you the analogy here. You're right. In those days, they had the blockbusters, they had the video outlet, and they were looking for content, desperate content to kind of fill the need. Once you rented a film, what more do you have? In order to keep the businesses going, they needed new content all the time. That's the reason why we got funding for Killer Clowns. It really was, unbeknownst to us, according to the executives and the financial people, it was a direct-to-video thing. They just released it in a couple of cities around the country without putting a big theatrical push behind it, because they made $1 million sale directly to, let's say, the video stores. Very disappointing to us, but that was the model. Now you go 30 years into the future, here we are at another realm where you've got streaming services, Netflix, Hulu, all of these guys, Amazon, looking for content. So now it's the same thing, or at least it was in the last 6 years or so. Now it's kind of cutting down. They're spending billions of dollars on content to fulfill their library so they can become the number one streamers. So it really is the same exact thing that happened in the 80s is happening now with a different technology. And you're going to see, okay, who's going to win the streaming wars? Who's going to be the new content provider? But it's given everybody an opportunity, like it gave us in the 80s. It's giving young filmmakers, you don't have a track record, who might not get the big budgets for, let's say, the major networks or a major theater chain or a studio, but it's giving them an opportunity to make content that they have a distribution for. And even the internet is another way to go too. Vimeo and all these platforms, where before, if you made a film, you might get a chance to show it in a film festival somewhere in the world. But now you could do content pretty much the same quality that we do, with the same equipment, the same software, and get distribution on the internet through a variety of different platforms. So it's kind of democratizing, I think, the creative process. Now you can do content and get it out there.
Yeah. Do you ever do anything like that? Have you ever tried to just do something on your own?
Oh yeah. I have. We have a thing called Channel 8 from Outer Space, about alien, about a pirate TV station on a little asteroid somewhere, stealing signals from all over the universe, and it's just creating this alien content. That's a great idea we got.
Nice.
We have tons. I think called the Interdimensional Safari, about you go into different dimensional portals and you go hunting for animals. It's all these great ideas that we're trying to launch on the internet, because it's easy access. It's really hard now. Again, it's getting increasingly more difficult to actually get those deals.
Yeah.
It's kind of filled up, and now Netflix is so big, they're looking around the planet for producers of creative material, and they're going for like the big dogs, I call them, people that have known quantities or known quality work that is more international. So it's getting a little tougher than it was when they first started the streaming wars.
Interesting. Well, back to Killer Clowns. So tell me, this is your directorial debut, right? You pitched this movie, and that on the first shot, they're like, "Yeah, do it. Let's go." Did you have a script? Was it still an idea? How long had you been working on it?
Oh, it's just an idea. I was always kind of conjuring up different ideas. And one day I started asking myself, okay, what's the most frightening image I could think of, a scene? And I imagined myself driving up a lonely mountain road, and a car passes me, and I look to see who it is, and it's a clown driving, in a car. And to me, a clown being where he shouldn't be is scary. And then it kind of launched off from there, from outer space and all that stuff. So it was pretty much just that much of an idea. I think we might have had a treatment. I think we banged together a little scenario based on, do you remember the 1957 Steve McQueen version of The Blob?
Yeah.
I love that movie. To me, that's the classic 60s sci-fi movie. You've got teenagers trying to convince the adult community that there's something out there that's killing everybody, and nobody believes them, and it's a battle. So we took that framework, and we just kind of gave it a loose, we just put clowns from outer space in there doing it's like circus motif and clown gags, what we call candy-coated kills.
Well, that's what I like about that movie, right? Like my kids, my boys are 16 and 9. My daughters want nothing to do with anything that's horror film or clowns. They're scared to death of them. But my two boys, they love it. And what I loved about the movie is, you get a few scares, but it's also pretty funny. And so it's a good kind of introduction into the genre of horror. And so I really like, that's why both of my kids this Christmas, they got Killer Clowns t-shirts. Because you got so much merchandise out there now. It's like it's more popular now than it was even then.
That's really surprising to me. It is more popular. We go to conventions, we meet fans, and we talk about what they like and how they were introduced to the film. And it's very much like what you've said. People who grew up in the 80s who might have seen it on USA cable or on VHS, they've grown up, they have kids, they share it with their kids because it's a good entry into the genre, as you put it. It's not so scary. It's really a sci-fi comedy with some horror elements. And I think it's a gateway to that whole horror genre. It's very safe. So it's kind of multi-generational now. And but the fact that it's actually so popular is a kind of a mystery. Why now? I sometimes think it might be just the crazy world we live in now, that it's so wacky. It's like Alice in Wonderland. It's just everything it's like Bizarro Land in Superman. Things are crazy. So I would see people kind of coming to this sense of humor in this film and just kind of saying, "Oh yeah, this is my world now."
Yeah, well, and that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you was because like the movie in some ways is just so funny because of how just for me, I'm sitting there, I'm like, these clowns are coming from outer space and killing. Like the concept is like ridiculously funny in itself, right? It's just kind of a funny thing, and at the same time, you have the horror element because they're clowns, they're creepy, So I just it's
a spin on something familiar. It spins on it. I mean, one of the deep ideas in it is that the way people just surrender their children to the lap of a clown or Santa Claus or something. These people in costumes, and it's just so foolish that you don't know who these people are and you don't know what their intentions are. So we played with that, with the social acceptance of these iconic images. They might not be what you think they are, and like the shadow gag, you see a clown out there performing some kind of entertainment. You are like moths to a flame. You go to it, and then you realize, wait a second, that clown is not really too cool looking. It's kind of odd. And then it's too late. You're trapped in the jaws of the clown. So we were playing with that kind of social aspect of clowns in our society.
Right. Wow. So did you ever expect, I mean, what were your expectations as the movie was going on? Did you have expectations on how well it would do?
No. We were brand new to all of this industry. Like I said, it's the first feature we made. We just wanted to make a film that we wanted to see. It really is that simple. And I would encourage people who are making films, who want to make films, just do it that way. Don't make something you think people are going to like. Just do what you like. And you'd be surprised if it's a genuine expression with truths attached to it. If it's genuine, I think people will attach themselves to it. I think they'll gravitate to the project. That's all it was. We filled it with all the stuff that we loved from the 50s and 60s movies. I mean, there's so many iconic images in there that we put a spin on, but they're really images that we were raised on, like Forbidden Planet, a really great sci-fi film. Remember the power chamber, the Krell laboratories down in the burrows of the planet? That's the power chamber inside the tent. That whole shot is really based on that. And the cocoons from Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and a little bit of Looney Tunes. There's Duck Tracy, when Daffy Duck was Dick Tracy, and he was going after the Neon Noodle and the bad guys. And you see these footprints. He's following footprints on the ground, and he picks them up like they're like little flat things he picks up. And we put that in the jail cell. So it's a mixture of Mad Magazine, Looney Tunes, sci-fi, and Laurel and Hardy.
Nice. Did you ever expect that you were going to be the director of a cult classic movie? I mean, could you have ever expected that?
Oh, no, not in a million years. No. We had no expectations on what it would do. I mean, we liked it. We thought it was a pretty funny movie. And, at one point we thought it would be a great midnight movie, sort of like, what's that midnight movie? Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Right.
I mean, so many elements in the film that once you know those silly lines, like, what are you going to do with those pies, boys? There's an interactivity that you could have there. In fact, we did at one convention, we did have like a slightly interactive screening of it, where at one point when Mike and Debbie are escaping from the circus tent and the clown shoots popcorn at them, we had people in the audience with popcorn, and when they shot the popcorn, they threw it in the air, and the whole theater exploded with popcorn. It was great.
That's awesome. Where did you do that? Which Comic-Con was that at?
Oh, well, actually, it was at Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Was their first? I think it was their first convention. And I remember the hotel. It wasn't in a theater. It was like in a little lobby hotel. You know how they have their screening areas, and they were really pissed off because the place was just inundated with popcorn, and we didn't clean up. They had to. But it was great. It was great fun, and there were so many other opportunities in that show that would be great. We went to one screening in Chicago at the Magic Box Theater, and I recreated an animation of the shadow gag that we projected on the curtains. So we had a clown come out of the audience and put his little bag down and actually went up there and started doing some shadows. And then we had the spotlight that had animation on it. And he actually did a live shadow gag for the audience.
Oh,
it was
nice.
Great.
That's
so I wish we could do more of that.
Did you, has there been any talk? Because right now, I mean, it seems like sequels from the 80s are a big thing. Has there been any talk of sequels?
We've been talking about it since 1989.
I'm surprised that there's not. I mean, with this cult classic, kind of genre now, and all these movies being remade, sequels coming out. You know, Cobra Kai is huge on Netflix, and all these different things. I'm surprised somebody hasn't approached you and had interest in doing a Killer Clowns 2.
Me too. Well, it's always rights are securing rights are really complicated. We had 2 or 3 bats at it at various times over the years. We pitched something at the people of MGM who controls the property, and it wasn't the right mix. It's really a matter of luck. You can pitch, and people will like the idea, but they're not maybe they don't have the power to get it produced. They don't have the financing behind them. They'll love the project, but they don't have the mechanism to get it funded. Or for some reason, they don't see it fitting their lineup, or they have something similar. So there's a lot of reasons why that don't really reflect on the quality of the material. But it's interesting. There was a time, I think it was MGM was going to be making a deal with Sci-Fi Channel. They were making a sequel to Critters. They were doing something with Critters that we didn't want to get involved in because it wasn't a very big budget. But then they were going to do Clowns for like $2 million. And happily, the people at MGM thought it was worth more than just doing a $2 million knockoff. And I really appreciated that, because anybody could just do what they want with the property. But I think they recognize our involvement and I believe this, I'll say it, any Killer Clowns without us involved is not going to be what I think the fans are going to want. I
100%.
think the brothers are a big part of that franchise or that property, that IP. And in fact, it's kind of proven an outside company, Good Shepherd Entertainment, a game company, licensed the rights to do a video game. And they contacted TerraVision in Bodoga, in Brazil. And they produced it, but they got us involved. They hired us as consultants and creative advisors to make sure that it was authentic. They were creating the 1980s movie. They wanted to make it as authentic as they can in both the clown's look and the tone of the kills. So we were very happy to be included in that. And they did a great job. They really were in sync with what we wanted. And it was a really wonderful collaboration. So we are really looking forward to the game. We've played it, and it's a lot of fun. It's what I think a lot of the fans, it's like the next step in its entertainment. You get to be people running away from the clowns. It's, what do they call it? An asymmetrical multiplayer game where you can team up with people. It's 3 clowns and 7 people fighting, and you can be clowns. So you can be any one of our Killer or Tiny or Shorty, whatever they call them. And you have the cocoon gun, you got balloon dogs. It's all of our gags in an interactive gameplay. It should be pretty cool. I think fans are going to like it.
I'm excited for it. I actually went to GameStop like 2-3 weeks ago, and I asked when a release date is, and they didn't have it yet. So hopefully we have it coming up soon.
Well, it's
So
coming up. I mean, it's done. We've played it, and I think my son's in the gaming industry, and they have to debug it. They've
yeah,
got to play it and play it. There's a beta version they're going to release to give people an opportunity to play it and kind of work out some of the bugs. It's so complicated
yeah.
how they do this, how they program this, all the interactivity and the possibilities. I'm amazed, but it's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm excited. You mentioned Critters. That's another one from my childhood. That was a cool movie because it came out right around. I think Gremlins came before it and had huge success, and so they started doing Critters, Ghoulies, like all these kind of little monsters. And you were involved in Critters. Now I remember 1 and 2 as a kid. 3 and 4 I just recently saw. Were you involved in all 4 of them?
Yeah, our company produced the critter effects on all 4 of them.
Wow.
The brothers were more closely involved with 1 and 2, but when New Line did 3 and 4, we were so busy with so much stuff. We actually had another team working with us, and it was they were low budget films. It was really hard to produce what I think the vision they had in their minds on the budget that we had for those films. So it kind of suffered, I think, a little bit. But they're both, I think the fans like them. It continues, but I think is a pretty unique little monster character. They're kind of funny, they're very deadly, and a lot of creative kills, which is always what people like.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I remember the first one being kind of more serious horror, and the second one kind of became more humorous.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so talk with us about the creation of a critter or a killer clown. Like what is it that you do to create that? Do they give you an idea, or do they kind of give you a license? Do they give you a framework?
well, I'll answer that with Critters. Stephen Herrick was directing, and Brian Muir wrote the script. And in the script, it said fur balls with teeth was the description of these, and they were mostly mouth.
Mhm.
And in conversations with both of them and the producers, Rupert Harvey, they wanted to create something that didn't look like a man in a suit. It defied human anatomy, but it was mostly, as they described in the script, a fur ball with teeth. So my brother Charlie started doing sketches, and we started thinking, okay, what's out there that kind of is reminiscent to this? And the image of Charlie did a bunch of drawings, a 4-legged version of it, like a dog with a big mouth with a lot of shark teeth. But then we thought of the Tasmanian Devil from the Warner Brothers cartoons. That character had small arms, and had that shape, and it was all mouth. It was all mouth. So we started doing variations of something like that. And Charlie came up with that design. I did a maquette, just like the Killer Clowns. I would do a sculpture. That's what Charlie and I did in the early 80s. There was so much competition for special effects work that I think we were one of the first people to actually try to bid on a job with actual artwork. Charlie would do the drawings, and I would do a 3-dimensional version of it. That actually was the first 3-dimensional visualization of a concept. And I think that gave us a leg up on a lot of companies in those days, early on, because I wondered how many people actually did that. So when they saw this maquette, which is pretty much a preliminary version of the design we went with, we got the job.
Oh, wow.
Also, I'll also mention, thanks to Kevin Yeager, who had just worked for New Line Cinema, and he did the effects on the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And then when Critters came up, they wanted to give him Critters, and he said, no, I'm busy with this. Why don't you have the Kyoto brothers do that? So him mentioning our names was a really good leg up. And that was our the first show that we ever keyed. And keying a show means we were responsible for all of the Critter gags. And that was a big deal for us. It really put us on the map as an effects company.
So when you say you were in charge of all the gags, what do you mean by that?
Oh, well, you just don't make one puppet that does everything. There was different gags in the film. The kid threw a firecracker at one of the critters, and the critter puts it in his mouth. We had to make a specialty blow-up puppet that actually had balloons in his mouth, so he would go, his cheeks would flare up and balloon up. That's a specialty puppet. And then smoke came out of his mouth, so there was a tube that we blew smoke through. There were puppets that we threw. There were puppets that we rolled and had to turn around the corners. I have so many funny stories about the high-tech and the low-tech solutions that we tried to make the critter balls roll on command. And it ended up the expensive radio-controlled ball that we developed didn't work on location. So he ended up just creating these balls, and we would put a weight inside that was offset from the center. And then we would roll it and it would go around the corner, depending on which side the weight was on. Really low-tech things. But if you look at the film, every time a critter did something, it was usually a special puppet that was made just for that shot. There's one walking shot where the critter walks and jumps into the toilet bowl. That was a critter with a little motor in him, with his legs moving like this. And he was on wires on a trolley, like an overhead trolley. And the power for the motor was through the wires that powered, and you couldn't see the wires, but they powered the legs. And we just made him walk just a quarter of an inch above the ground, and he just scooted along the ground.
Wow. That's so
one
awesome.
puppet, that puppet for that one shot.
Wow. So when you say you were in charge of all the gags, you mean they had the gags written and they needed you in charge of creating everything?
Yes, absolutely. They wrote them, and then we had to figure out how we could implement them, get them ready for shooting.
That's awesome. So then another one that you did, which I wanted to touch on, which is one of my favorites from my childhood, is Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And of course, the most famous scene and character really from that show is Large Marge, other than Pee-wee. Everyone remembers "Don't forget Large Marge sent you," and you did.
Yeah.
You did the actual stop animation for the part where she turns into the ghost. Is that right?
Yeah. That's very fortunate. I mean, when I think back at our career, we've done some of the key shots in a lot of motion pictures, and Large Marge is one of them. I mean, it was just very lucky. I remember Rick Heinrichs, Tim Burton's like a creative partner in those times. He contracted the effects, and there were 2 effect shots in there. We had stop motion. There was the dinosaur that had the bike, the giant dinosaur, and there was this Large Marge effect. And he said, which one do you want to do? And I said, well, I like dinosaurs. Let me do the dinosaur shot. He goes, oh no. Rick wanted to do that shot. So I said, shit, how are we going to do Large Marge? How do we approach this? So it was an interesting challenge. What we ended up doing was we did a head cast of Alice Nunn, the actress. And then we made a thin clay positive of her face. And then we made these replacement eyes, and we got her wig, the wig she wore in the show. And we got her wardrobe, and we dressed this clay image, this clay puppet of Alice Nunn to be Large Marge, and I animated it. We sculpted frame by frame all the transition from I guess Marge to Large Marge. Wow. And it was all based on Tim's drawings. I mean, Tim did some really very specific key drawings, key poses he wanted to see it hit. And Rick Heinrichs did a storyboard that kind of blocked it all out. But once the change started, it was me hand sculpting frame by frame the transformation. It took about 12 hours, maybe 12 or 13 hours to make.
Wow. See, that's the thing I loved. You know, we're in this age of CGI, which has really changed the movie industry, in my opinion. And in my opinion, this is just my opinion. I'm not a Hollywood anybody at all, but as a lover of film, almost has become a crutch. And it makes me respect what you and others in that time frame in the 80s and 90s did to create these things without computers and without all this technology. I mean, to sit there and think that you sat there for 12, 13 hours and just hand sculpted all of the different things to make this transition that became part of this movie that everybody who watched the movie remembers. It's probably the most memorable scene of the whole show. Is really something.
Oh yeah, I'm really fortunate, very proud of that. It really is an iconic moment in a really good film. I mean, the way Tim did the entire scene, it just blocked out so beautifully, and that was a really great punchline. Yeah, I know what you mean about CG. I mean, computers are a great technology. It's a great tool, could do wonderful things, but I think the way everybody's using them now, it kind of homogenizes all the effects under one style. And when it came to more traditional effects, you saw the hand of the artist, and each studio had a different style to the effect, using different techniques. So there was a variety and a handmade quality that you know it's not real, but there's something more fun about the handmade quality of the 80s effects as opposed to, let's say, the high-end CG, which is really impressive, but I don't think it has the same impact. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it really doesn't. It doesn't have the same impact. And on top of that, like I said, it's almost become a crutch. I've noticed that the quality of the story in some of these movies, they're so focused on making these giant, these giant big movies, these giant worlds, and the character development. Like, for example, like what they did in the King Kong movies. I wasn't into the 30s King Kong movie as much as I was. I think it came out in the 70s, the one that the Universal Studios one. The one,
oh yeah. De Laurentiis.
yeah. And so, but like to think about how they created those back then versus, say, King of the Monsters, the Godzilla, King Kong versus Godzilla movie that just came out, still a good movie, but I think we'd all agree, like, the story and character is a little lacking. You know what I mean? Whereas in these other movies, you can't just rely on it. It becomes a part of a better story. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of look. I think it's easy to add production value through special effects to a movie to make it really, an amazing experience. But I think what people can't do very well, don't do very often, is make a great movie with good characters and a strong story. That's always a challenge. But as far as quality and image quality and effects, I think they've reached the top. I mean, they can't do much better. It's amazing what they're able to do. I mean, literally, you can do anything now. You really can create any image. But then I feel that there's a quality to it. It's like a really great cartoon. It doesn't really hit that reality.
Right.
Like, it's kind of funny to say, but no matter how real CG is, it's always fake. And no matter how fake a special effect would be, it's real. Stop motion is real. It's a tangible object being photographed by real light, and you sense that. CG, as real as it is, there's always some kind of something about it, the gravity, the weight, the way it's composited. There's something it's amazing. You get a reaction, but it doesn't have that same reality. Maybe I'm just old school, but
no, well, and maybe that's me too. I mean, maybe my kids always joke about how old I am, but yeah, I make a point, as a movie guy, to show my kids the movies from the 80s and 90s, those movies that I grew up with, and some from the 70s as well, just because I do feel like those are good films. They're good movies. They love going to all of the Marvel movies. We go to all of them. All the DC movies, we go to all of them. They love all that stuff. But there's something about sitting down and watching Pee-wee's Big Adventure now and seeing all the things they did and all the things that you created and the way that you created it, that's just so different and exciting to watch and so creative. It just seems more, you really have to, the computer isn't doing it for you. It's coming from your head, and you're making it real.
Yeah, it's yeah, I know. Show your kids things from the 30s and 40s. 40s is a great time for motion pictures. Really, the golden age of Hollywood.
Yeah,
great stuff. And I agree. It's when I think about the films, it's just the tentpole pictures they're making now. I mean, the Marvel films and all that. They're just really superhero soap operas with big effects. So what they'll do is they'll have a character moment, and then they'll fight a fantastic battle. Then that'll stop them to have a character moment. It's not woven in. It's like it's a comic book, or it's like an amusement park. And to that, I say, if I want to go to an amusement park, I go to an amusement park if I want thrills. When I go to the movies, I want to see story and character. So they don't really resonate with me. That's not the kind of film I go for.
Yeah. Is there a movie that you would recommend that you would say in the last 10 years was one that you were like, wow, that was amazing?
Oh, well, actually, when I go to the movies, I read it. I can figure out the plot ahead of time. I know exactly where they're going. I'm not a real good audience anymore, but what's that film? I forget the title. Everything, Everywhere, All at the Same Time.
Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
All at once. That was the only film I've seen recently that surprised me. That had me at the edge of my seat waiting for what's going to happen. A thoroughly enjoyable film that surprised the hell out of me and satisfied me on the character level It's amazing. It's an amazing film.
Yeah, that's one that I have not seen it, just for been busy, but that's one I definitely want to see. Um, uh, Real quick, I want to ask you. Well, I want to talk about a couple more of your movies, but first, you keep bringing up your brothers, and have we ever really talked about them? How many brothers work with you? Is it you have three of you?
Yeah, there's three of us. Let's say Charlie's the oldest. He's our art director, production designer. He does all the sketches and all that 2D work in pre-production. I'm in the middle, and I kind of come up with a lot of the concepts. And I was a stop motion animator early on, all during my early career, and then I just started, yeah, coming up with ideas and directing it, giving it that storyline, the character through lines, and all that. And my younger brother, Edward, he would manage our company. He did all of the business affairs at Kyoto Brothers. And then he stepped up to being a producer, and he's a legit producer. In fact, he produced the animation for Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. We got involved in that. And he was key in producing all of that, getting the animation out for the film.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So busy, man.
Well, it's a great time for stop motion. Going back to CG, you've got a generation, I'm sure your boys and daughter they grew up on CG. That was like the mainstay of their entertainment. And I see this at CalArts, the students that are coming in, they've seen that they've discovered stop motion. It's new to them. It's different than CG. And I think that's why you're seeing this resurgence in the technique. I mean, we've got Wendell and Wild, you've got Pinocchio, you got Marcel the Shell, all contenders for the Academy Award. Never before did you have 3 stop motion films up for that award. So I think there's this quality about stop motion, the handmade quality. You sense the hand of the artist in it that I think the younger generation is gravitating towards. So you're going to see more of these films coming out. You'll always have CG. It's a great tool to work with. But I think these traditional techniques are going to have a renaissance.
That's awesome. I wanted to ask you about a more recent film that you were involved in, Elf. You did you worked on the North Pole, the scenes, which were I loved personally, because it was a throwback to all of those claymation Rudolph and Santa Claus is Coming to Town movies from yesteryear. And I know that's what Jon Favreau kind of was looking for. Can you tell me the process of how that all came about?
Let me see. Oh, that's a funny story. It's a good one too. It's work. Good work gets work. We landed that job in an odd way. Joe Bauer was an effects DP working with John on a number of films, but currently working with John on Elf. And John was talking about the stop motion in the film, and he said, "Do you know any stop motion companies?" And Joe Bauer recommended us because we gave Joe one of his first jobs when he came to Hollywood. We worked on Land of the Lost, the Sid and Marty TV show, and we hired Joe Bauer to be our cameraman for the animation. So that's work in the 90s, and then Joe remembered us and said, "Oh yeah, get to Kyoto, they could do this." And we met John, and we hit it off, and it was really great.
Nice. Did he have a lot to say about how he wanted that created, or did that come from you, or was it a collaboration?
Well, a collaboration, but it came from John. He loves stop motion animation. He's a real fan. He loved the Rankin and Bass holiday specials, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Frosty the Snowman and all those. So, and he wanted that look. I mean, the art direction of the show went that way, very much Rankin and Bass. And he wanted, very specifically, to duplicate the snowman that Burl Ives played. He wanted Leon Redbone to be the voice and be the character. So it was very, very specific. In fact, it was really funny. They wanted one of the characters, a narwhal, that says, "So long, buddy. Hope you find your dad."
Yeah.
John said, and he was great. John's just amazing talent. He said when the narwhal rises, he wants to see that tusk come up out of the water like the Chrysler Building. He wants to be like the Chrysler Building in New York. And we're from New York too. He's from New York. So we knew exactly what he was talking about. But my brother Charlie did a bunch of drawings, character drawings of the narwhal. And John had done like a little scratchy sketch, because John can draw. John was a good cartoonist. And he did this little sketch. So Charlie did like maybe 20, 30 sketches of different characters for the narwhal. And John said, no, not that, not that, not that. He said something simple, more like Rankin and Bass. So then we looked at John's drawing. Charlie did one just like John's drawing, and that's the one John went with. So John had a really good sense of what he wanted. It really harkened back to the simple toy-like design of Rankin and Bass.
Mm-hmm.
And, so that was a lot of fun. We did some great work. In fact, I think they expanded. We ended up doing the opening titles as well.
Oh, wow.
So,
That's awesome. And that whole scene, I mean, just there was a magic of that North Pole scene that really pulled the whole movie together, you know?
yes. And there's a TV show on Netflix called Movies We Love, and they do a documentary of the making of Elf. You should check it out because it's John as a visionary. He had an idea what he wanted to do with this film, and you have to fight for what you want. And he fought, and he was right. We even talked to the Elf producers afterwards, and they said, yeah, we wanted to make a Will Ferrell comedy, and they were kind of fighting with John, who wanted to make a family evergreen. He wanted to make a classic, and John pushed his way, and he got what he wanted. And Elf is a holiday favorite. It's going to be around forever. Rudolph. And in fact, and our affiliation with John on Elf gave us the opportunity to pitch our Alien Christmas book that we had written to John, pitched it as a special. And when John took us out, we had been pitching it for maybe 4 or 5 years before. But we never sold it. But with Jon Favreau involved, we sold it to Netflix, and we got to produce with John as the executive producer, me directing.
That's awesome.
So work gets work, and John was amazing. He's a great collaborator, great storyteller.
How did you end up on Team America World Police?
How much time do you have? That's a long story. I think we bid on it as an effects company when they were doing bids for doing the puppets for the show. We didn't get it. We had never really done marionettes before, so I can see why. Another company got it. But during the preliminary, the pre-production, and the first test shoot they did, Matt and Trey were not happy with the performances of the puppet and the team that was doing it. They weren't getting what they wanted. I think the company that was doing it was trying to give them, not the company, but the performers were giving them realistic performances with the puppets. And Matt and Trey said that's not what they wanted. So we were contacted to kind of take over the production. And we read the script, and it was outrageous. It was funny. But one of the scenes was, the climax was the Korean Army and the American Army on top of the Golden Gate Bridge with a school bus of children. And there's a big battle on the Golden Gate Bridge. And we said, I don't know how we can't do this. This is way too complicated. This is impossible. So we said no. Then they came to us again, and it was changed a little bit, but we said no. They had spent a lot of money on it, but there wasn't enough money left to do anything. And then we got an offer from one of the executives at Paramount, and he said, guys, look, we want to make this movie. We'd really appreciate it if you do this. And I said, okay. I just wanted two things. I didn't want my company to go bankrupt, and I didn't want anybody to yell at us because it was impossible. It was really a difficult task. And we said yes, and we did it. We're really happy we did it. It was the most difficult job I've ever had in my entire career.
Wow.
But really one of the more rewarding ones, because it's just a blast. A funny as hell movie, great topic. And Matt and Trey, those guys are the hardest working guys. You talk about genius here in Los Angeles and Hollywood. Those guys are just hardworking guys, and they're pretty brilliant. Trey was operating all the radio controls, doing the voice, because he was writing the script on a daily basis. He knew the material. And Matt was over there doing second unit directing. We had like 5 or 6 units going at the same time because the puppets didn't do anything. But that's what Matt and Trey wanted. They wanted the puppets to showcase their inability, these super police force trying to protect the world, and they're inept. They fight like this. That was the humor, and we kind of fell into that. We kind of exploited the inabilities of the marionettes, which was the comedy that these guys wanted to bring to a serious Bruckheimer type disaster movie.
Right. And that's what I was gonna. It's surprising that you said that was the hardest thing to work on, because I would have imagined, being someone who's never done anything with puppets like that, getting marionettes to do something that looks real is really hard. But that was what was so funny about it, is it didn't look real. It just looked like marionettes doing ridiculous marionette things, and that would have been easier, I thought. So,
well, it is easier in the performance. There's a larger leeway. There were some serious moments with Kim Jong-il and things like that, but it was an army of puppeteers and technicians to get those shots up there. In the beginning, we only had like 1 unit, 2 units shooting, and we were producing maybe 1 or 2 shots a day. You're never going to get this film done. Then we had to multiply it. We had to get people on lifts, on what do they call them? The lifts for people, work lifts, to hang 15-foot strings. We had 80 puppeteers in Paris, just stringing all across the miniature scenery was like 90 feet by 100 feet. They were big miniatures. The puppets were 22 inches tall. So again, getting the monitors up there, getting the communications up there, getting the strings and all the puppets organized, and then you start shooting. It just took so long. We had 5 or 6 units over one tremendous warehouse, and then we were shooting on a stage at Fox, 20th Century Fox, 2 units on 2 different facilities to get this movie done. It was massive undertaking. Yeah. But the art direction, the humor, the writing, it's a real joy. It's a really funny movie.
Yeah, no, it's great. And those guys, it's funny. They've done a lot of things that are really, South Park, of course, hugely successful. Basketball.
The Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon is great.
Yeah, what's funny is I actually am Mormon, and that's what's so funny is that even the Mormon Church will put advertisements in wherever it goes. So a lot of people don't know this. So when that came out, because it is a comedy, it is making fun of the religion, right? I can't remember if it's both of them or one of them is a Mormon, or at least a former Mormon. And but yeah, the church, everywhere it goes, they put an advertisement in the playbill, and they have missionaries outside handing out copies of the Book of Mormon. So
I think if you take it the right way, it's sort of like it's an acknowledgement of all religions, really. It's not really poking fun at Mormonism. It's about the whole establishment of these organized religions. And I think there is room to make fun of, but those guys are really clever. I don't think they really offend. They offend with the details, but the overall idea is they're embracing all these things in a big way too. I think they're brilliant.
Well, and that's the thing, is that you're right in that. I've tried to talk with some people about this. Actually, some of the episodes I do are on specifically with scholars from the Mormon faith and things of that nature. And, there is a level of this that, if you're looking at it with a logical eye, is quite ridiculous. Even the concept, right? The concept of Christianity, that a man died and rose 3 days later, and now everybody can just be forgiven of any bad thing that they've done, is really kind of a ridiculous concept if you're looking at it logically, because it just seems so radical and out of possibility. There's an eye of faith to that, and so in that concept, it does make sense. Or that Moses actually raised his arms and the Red Sea parted. It's just it's ridiculous if you're looking at it with a logical mind and not a spiritual, faithful mind. And so, yeah, I think that there is room for humor in that, just as there is in politics and any other thing. Yeah. When people get too offended by that stuff, there's room in the marketplace for all of that. So
yeah, just open up your heart and your mind, accept the humor, but your faith is something that is yours, and it can't be taken away by other people's opinions. I should be able to enjoy it all.
And I think also this is just a completely off-topic thing, and we'll get back to you and your work, but it's funny to me. I've been thinking about this a lot, because my last podcast was with a scholar who talked about some of the issue, one of the big issues in the Mormon faith, which is the restrictions on priesthood for Black men up until about 1978. And we talked about the progeny of that. And you know, obviously it's very significant. And talking with some of my friends, you know, about this, yeah, you know, we have to have these discussions, and we have to, when people get offended by that stuff, when they feel the need to just defend at all costs, it almost comes off like almost like a insecurity in their own faith.
Yes, well put. That's what I would say. To listen, reflect on it, and come to a contemporary understanding of what it means in today's world is something that you could do without losing your faith. It doesn't affect your faith, and if it does, how deep is your faith? It's
Right.
discussion. In
Right.
that case, I mean, it's systemic racism. You have to say, okay, why? We're human beings. We're all the same. What is it about an individual's color that would exclude them from this? Just talking about that. How does it defile your faith, really?
Yeah, and it's almost like a thing with sometimes the therapist would call whole object relations, and that they can't hold two things in at the same time. Like they're either all good or all bad. So, you know, like, is it surprising that someone from the 1840s or 50s, a white man, would be racist? No, that's not shocking. They all were, right? But for some reason, because it's a leader of a faith, we just have to defend and act as though that's not possible. And you go, were they really that exceptional? They're a product of their time. And even if you do believe they are a prophet or they are working for God, they can work for God and also be imperfect, right?
Well, that's what we celebrate in Christianity, that
Right.
we're all not perfect, but we're
Right.
forgiven by this father figure. Okay. Yeah, but well put. I mean, that's what it is. And having that discussion is more inclusive, more engaging, and would just bring more followers to a faith, not
Yeah.
pushing people away, which is the antithesis of what I think you want to do with your beliefs.
Yeah. And that's where it's getting, and it's going to be interesting, I think, as a Mormon and in Christianity in general, but especially the Mormon church. I think it's going to be really interesting to see where it goes in the next 30, 40 years. In my lifetime, it really will be. So
Yeah, that's right. I wonder too. We're having these moral wars right now, morality wars, and it doesn't bode well for humanity. I think something's going to happen. I'm interested to see where it goes.
yeah. Well, you know, sometimes also I think there's a pendulum swinging. You know, it was swung one way for a long time. It's kind of swung the other way, and I see the beginnings of maybe something that comes into the balance. But who knows? You never know what it's going to be.
I hope so. I hope it swings somewhere in the middle, because either extreme is kind of frightening.
Yeah. So going back to your work, what would you say of all the I mean, you've done a ton of projects. You've had a 35-year career. Was there one that was your favorite?
Well, Killer Clowns is a favorite because it was really our naivete in making films at that time. We just did what we wanted to do blindly.
Mm-hmm.
Given that project now, I'd be more intimidated by it, knowing what you need to do that. So that's a high point. Favorite? I don't know. Marcel the Shell at this latter part of my career is a true highlight, where Team America was like one of the funniest things we worked on and the hardest. But Marcel is the sweetest. I think I'm most proud of that than anything. It's just a delightful, wonderful film. And it's a great time for it. It's about family, community, friendship, togetherness, all of that. And it says it in the most simple form. I mean, I know Guillermo's Pinocchio has those themes as well, more complex. I think the simplicity of Marcel the Shell, the directness of those characters with that material, speaks so well, so gentle to people's hearts, that I'm really proud of it. And it's Dean Fleischer Camp, the director, his vision with Jenny Slate and Kirsten Lepore, the animation director, boarding all this out, and Nick Pally, the other screenplay writer. It's just the collective minds just made something really endearing. I hope it does well. I hope people are watching that film. It's good medicine for today.
Yeah. Is there, if you had an opportunity, like someone came to you, one of the big the big companies came to you and said, all right, here's all the money, you get to do your dream project, what do you think it would be? Do you have something in mind that'd be your dream?
Oh, well, I've got two big dreams, and we've been pitching them all these years. A killer, a killer clown, not a sequel, but like an epic 8-part series on Netflix or Prime. That actually, we've got this charted out. We've been working on it for like the last 30 years or so. It's
Oh,
just
wow.
an epic journey with all the characters, new venues, insights into the clowns as ancient astronauts visiting Earth centuries ago. It's a phenomenal epic that I hope we will be able to do. I think the fans would just die for it.
They would.
But then we've got this other idea that is just really makes me laugh. Imagine in the age of discovery, when the world was flat, and you have an ancient explorer going out to prove the world is flat, and discovers that it is. And so I don't know if you're familiar with the Ray Harryhausen films. To me, it's an epic Ray Harryhausen type epic movie with monsters and stuff, but with comedy. It's a bunch of Italians on a ship that go and they prove the world is flat and change the world as we know it in the process. It's epic. It's one of those things in the early. This is the '90s. We had that. We were making these low budget movie ideas, writing scripts for low budget movies, and we said, why are we delving into the low budget? Let's do something really big, a big epic movie. So we wrote this thing. We call it the Italian Odyssey.
Nice.
It's about a journey of a seaman to prove the world is flat, and it's great. I'm telling you, it's great. It's got the best ending I've ever seen in a motion picture story.
I would love to see that movie. If you ever get that off the ground, I will be there when it comes out.
Well, if somebody has some money and some influence, please come to Kyoto Brothers. We'll pitch it, and that would be the one. That would make me really happy because it's great. It's just fantastic.
Wow.
It's a world where all the myths and legends of the flat world come alive.
That would be a lot of fun.
A hero's journey. This guy becomes the hero within as he goes through fire. It's great.
That's awesome. Now, you said you had some kids and one of them's in the gaming industry. Is that right?
Yeah. My younger boy, Tony, he's works at Skydance. See, a Skydance Media or Interactive. Yeah, they produced the VR Walking Dead video game.
Oh yeah, that's a fun one.
He's a programmer. He programs.
Nice.
I'm going to brag about my son. He invented when you get wounded and you want to bandage your arm, instead of touching your arm and you get bandaged, he did the math and the programming to have you go like this, wrap it up and unwrap it by going actually doing the physical action. I don't know how he does it. It's amazing.
Is it exciting for you to see? I mean, he's kind of following in your footsteps and being in the gaming industry.
Not at all. My boys grew up with coming to our shop, seeing all our monsters and stuff. And I never was the kind of guy that said, "Oh, I want you guys to take over my business." Mm-hmm. My older son, Nick, he said, "Dad, I don't want to do what you do. I want to make money." So, he's great too. I'll plug him too. He and Blaine Halverson from Maidworn and Jason Momoa have produced a brand new vodka called Melly. You guys should shop for it. It's a fucking great, handmade in the United States with water from Montana. The freshest water in the world. Check it out. So I've been very fortunate. Both my boys, they're not in my business. They're doing other things that they love, and they're doing pretty well.
That's what's interesting about kids. Mine are six. I have 4, 16, 14, 11, and 9. And what's fun is that they're all into their own things. And it's fun to watch them get passionate about stuff, Yeah. So,
and as a good parent, you have to recognize you might introduce them to things that are your interest because there's a relationship there you want to share. But a good parent will recognize that they don't grab onto those ideas. You don't push it. If you're into baseball and sports, if your kid doesn't like that, don't push it. Let them find them. Give them a piano, give them a guitar, give them art supplies. Give them the materials to help them find their passion. My parents, God bless them, they knew nothing about what we were trying to do, but we wanted film process. They gave us a camera. They were so supportive our entire careers, just giving us the implements to kind of let us pursue what we wanted. They did have a chance to see our Killer Clowns. So they saw the culmination visiting the set at the end of the production to actually see us with the actors and the giant sets and stuff. So I'm happy they were able to see that aspect of our career.
Wow.
That's what a parent does. You guide them. You don't, you let them find their own path.
Yeah. I'm a big, you can't tell on video, but I'm 6'7". So I played basketball and all that. And I have a daughter who's, she's pretty tall for her age. And at the age of 9, it became very apparent that she was the athletic one of the kids. And I was like, you're my kid. You're the one who I'm going to mold you into something great. And I mean, the first year she went out there, I'll tell you what, she destroyed everybody. She was really good. And then the second year she said she didn't want to play. And I tried to force her to play. I was like, no, you're going to play. And it was a disaster. I mean, like she's very headstrong. My daughter Piper is so headstrong, and she made everybody's life miserable to the point. I mean, the coach, the tip players, everybody she just made everybody's life miserable because she didn't want to be there. And I finally, halfway through the season, had to just be like, I swear, Piper, I'll never ask you to play basketball again. Just please stop doing what you're doing and just finish out the season. And so she finished out, and now she's a big artist. She likes drawing, and all my kids have actually gotten into the arts. And so that's why they're so excited about me talking to you, is because my son is he's into music. My 2 younger ones have started doing theater. And so this is kind of a special one. I really appreciate your time. I have a couple of more questions before I let you go. These are questions I ask everybody, just kind of about them. So what would you say is your biggest success in life?
Oh, my family, my boys and my wife. I mean, that's, I realized early on in my career, I realized that all these accomplishments, these movies, these effects, all these cool things we're doing, it's not satisfying. It's really not. You're doing this stuff and it's cool, it's fun, but you need somebody to share it with, and you need something more. And so when I had a family, and I never wanted one, I didn't want kids, when you're 29, 30, 31, I didn't want kids, but all of a sudden you're 33, 34, 35. It's the biology, I think. And all of a sudden I just want to have family. And I met my wife, Teresa, and we were about the same age, the same kind of needs and wants. And we had our family. And when I think back, that's given me the biggest joy. So my family.
That's awesome. Yeah. And then what would you say would be your biggest failure, and what did you learn from it?
Oh, my biggest failure. There's been so many. And I'd say with each failure, you learn so much. It makes you better. So they're not mistakes. They're not bad. It's like good stuff. Oh, what's the biggest? I think about my productions. Well, making people angry. Yeah, my biggest. Oh, yeah. I don't know how many people are going to see this. Alien Christmas was the best thing in my career and the worst thing in my career. Not vetting your crew as well as I should have. I had people working against me that made what was my best achievement as far as getting what I wanted a fucking nightmare. I learned too late, switched it turned around. I did what I wanted, but there was a point in there that was the worst. When I think about that project, I just get a stomach ache about all the crap we had to deal with because of some individuals. Wow. I'm not mentioning any names, but I do have the right to say it was the best and the worst experience of my entire career. Wow. But I learned so much from it.
Like what? What do you mean?
That's simply put, vetting people. Just finding out when you hire people at certain functions, you really have to drill the hell out of them and make sure that they're going to deliver what they want, that they understand the job responsibilities, and And that harkens back to now my experience on Marcel Lachelle, Dean, Kirsten, and my brother Edward. They put together a really great crew, and they worked it to make sure they got the right people. And it was a lovely group of a community of people that were working towards a common goal, us included. I'm a director. I've made films. I'm a producer. But when I'm, let's say, a supervising animation director working on somebody else's project, I know what you're supposed to do with the director. I'm there as a good soldier to give him what he wants, to give them what they want, the best I can do. And I should have known that when I made Alien Christmas.
Yeah. You know, I like what you said about the failures, that you've learned so much. I think you learn more from the failures than you do the wins. I mean, I remember I'm a trial attorney, and we had one case. It was one I took over from another attorney, and we ended up having to try it, and just a tough case. And it was the one case where we won, you know, but we didn't win what we were hoping, you know, it was that type of thing. And excellent attorney. Well, one of the two attorneys on the other side was very good. Learned a lot from that. But I remember thinking from that we won, but I felt like we lost. And I remember thinking to myself, I never want to feel like this again. And it made me work so much harder the next time. And I mean, I've done a bunch of trials since then. And yeah, I mean, I'm a completely different attorney from that experience. And so it definitely shapes who you are.
Yeah, so that's it. And they're good things. I mean, it's painful and the wounds are there, but if you learn from it, make sure it doesn't happen again, you're only better for it. And that's what I've learned. Yeah. So
and when you're a family, it's funny. I was telling my oldest son, because he sees my youngest son. He's like, Dad, you never let me do that. I go, well, yeah, you were the test case. I messed you up. He's going to be okay.
Practice.
Yeah. Okay. One last question I ask everybody, because I know you got a class to teach here. So someday, hopefully way out in the future, you're going to pass away. You're going to have a funeral, and someone's going to give your eulogy. What's the one thing that you hope someone says in your eulogy?
I hope that they thought I was a nice guy who was funny occasionally.
Well, definitely. I mean, you made Killer Clowns from Outer Space. You're definitely funny.
Yeah, I guess humor is at the basis of everything we do. Even when I've got another concept idea about marriage, men in marriage, and husbands and wives, and it's got comedy in it. It just has to have comedy. That has to be like the through line that kind of ties all of the serious pieces together. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a QR code on my tombstone, and I'm going to have videos that people could see with me talking to me at my plot site.
Oh, that's a genius. Smart caskets. Oh, we should get smart caskets out there. We should.
That's it.
You know,
you can speak to them. You can talk and have memories, old movies if you want, or just say, "Hey, how you doing? I haven't seen you in a while. Put some flowers down here for me."
I'm gonna go trademark that, and I'm gonna hire Kyoto Brothers to help me with the smart with smart caskets, so we can get those moving. Oh, yeah. Man. Yeah. Well, listen, this has been a pleasure. It's definitely a bucket list item for me. So the fact that we were able to talk, it means a lot, and I am grateful for your work, because if there's anything that I could tell you, it's that for me personally, the things that you did in all of these movies that we've talked about helped as someone who loves film and finds movies to be such an important part of his life. You helped shape me, and I'm sure there's millions out there like me. So the work that you've done has left a mark, and it really means a lot. I hope you're proud of yourself for that.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm really, really happy. And I do meet fans who tell the brothers that the film is a special moment for their father and them, that they might disagree on a lot of things, but watching the film together is something that brings them together. I hear a lot of stories about how parents share it with their children. And so this kind of feedback really makes this whole creative enterprise worthwhile. Because I'm expressing a joy that I have for this genre and for this film, and the fact that people are responding to it in ways that they are expressing it. They're buying merchandise. They're really into it. I that's a great thing for an artist to have their work accepted in such a great way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's been accepted, and I appreciate your time and coming on. This has been the Ed Lowe podcast. I'm supposed to tell everybody to subscribe. I'm supposed to do that a bunch. I never really do, but subscribe to the podcast. We have a lot of fun stuff coming up. And Stephen Chiodo, it's really been a pleasure. And hopefully we can have you back one day. I'll keep in contact with you. So.
Oh, sure. Do that after another project. Hopefully it'll be the Italian Odyssey or maybe Killer Clown streaming.
If that happens, I need to be on the list of podcasts that you go on to talk about, because I would love to see that movie for sure. Yeah. All right.
Okay. Well, thanks again. It's been a real pleasure. Yeah. It was a great conversation. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. We'll see you.